Chosen one, why did September 25th feel like the ground shifted beneath your feet, even though nothing visible changed? Why have you been waking up at 2:47 a.m., not 2:30, not 3, but exactly 2:47, with your heart pounding like someone just called your name in the dark? And why? Why can't you shake this restless electricity crawling under your skin, this knowing that something monumental just happened, but nobody around you seems to notice? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. You're awake right now, staring at this screen in the dead of night, because your soul recognized a frequency that just activated. While the world slept through September 25th and 26th like any other Thursday and Friday, you felt the shift. That wasn't anxiety. That wasn't insomnia. That was confirmation. You just passed the most silent, most brutal examination of your entire spiritual life. And most people failed without even knowing they were being tested. Here's what they won't tell you. The universe doesn't announce its tests with trumpets and scrolls. It slips them into ordinary moments, a conversation that triggers you, a door that slams in your face, a betrayal that cuts deeper than it should. These weren't random attacks, they were questions. And your response? That determined everything. On September 25th, a cosmic lock turned. Something that's been sealed since the moment you were born just clicked. And if you're still here, if you're hearing these words penetrate the fog in your mind, it's because heaven itself is about to tell you what you've been chosen for. But before we go deeper, before I reveal what's been hidden from you, until this exact moment, I want to pause and honor something sacred. Thank you to every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and sow that seed of faith. Now, here's the truth that's going to shatter everything you thought you knew about your life. You weren't struggling. You were being evaluated. Every tear you cried in secret, every night you begged God for relief, every moment you almost gave up, but didn't. That was the exam. And the results? They just came back. If your chest is burning right now, if something ancient is waking up inside you, if you feel exposed and seen and terrified and exhilarated all at once, type these 2 words in the comments. I passed. Don't think about it. Just let your spirit speak. Because what I'm about to reveal next will explain why you had to walk through hell and what you just qualified for on the other side. The test is over, chosen one. Now comes the reveal. Do you know what September 25th really was? Do you have any idea what actually happened while you thought you were just struggling? And can you handle the truth about why the last 40 days felt like you were being torn apart from the inside out? Listen to me, chosen one. What you've been calling your breakdown was actually your evaluation. What you've been calling your suffering was actually your examination. And what you've been calling the worst season of your life, that was heaven taking notes. The last 40 days weren't random. They were surgical, precise, divinely orchestrated to separate those who would crumble from those who would stand. And here's what's going to shake you to your core. Most people failed without even knowing they were being tested. Think about it. Since mid-August, hasn't life felt unusually heavy, like invisible weights were being stacked on your shoulders one by one? That restlessness that wouldn't let you sleep, that anxiety that had no name, that feeling of being completely alone even when surrounded by people. You thought something was wrong with you. But what if nothing was wrong? What if you were being measured? The universe doesn't hand out certificates for its most brutal exams. It doesn't announce, "Attention, chosen one, your test begins now." No, it slips the exam into your everyday chaos and watches how you respond when you think nobody's watching. Every bill that came due when your bank account was empty, that was a question. Every phone call that brought bad news, that was a question. Every night you fell to your knees because you couldn't carry it anymore. That was a question. And your tears. Those weren't weakness, beloved. Those were your answers written in salt water. See, Aries came first. 40 days of fire. And fire doesn't comfort, it consumes. It strips away everything that isn't essential. Every illusion you've been hiding behind. Every false identity you've been clinging to. Every comfortable lie you've been telling yourself. Aries burned it all down. That's why you felt like you were losing your mind. You weren't losing your mind. You were losing your masks. The book of Malachi says it plainly. He will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. He will purify the sons of Levi and refine them like gold and silver. Chapter 3, verse 3. You've been in the refiner's fire, and the heat wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to reveal what's real. But then September 25th came, and everything shifted. Taurus doesn't burn like Aries. Taurus doesn't strip, it plants. It roots. It locks things into place. And on that day, something in the spiritual realm clicked shut like a vault door ceiling. What was once fluid became solid. What was once uncertain became absolute. The cosmic lock turned, and those who made it through the fire, they got planted in new ground. Now here's where this gets personal. Here's where I need you to really hear me. If you're 70, 80, 90 years old right now, you might be thinking, I'm too old for tests. I've already proven myself. I've already paid my dues. But that's exactly why this test was designed for you. Because the greatest assignments require the greatest preparation. And preparation doesn't stop just because your body ages. Every scar on your body tells a story. Every wrinkle on your face is a chapter. Every medication bottle on your nightstand is evidence that you've survived battles that would have killed weaker souls. But here's what heaven sees that you don't. Those scars, those wrinkles, those battles, they weren't just survival, they were qualifications. You think God forgot about you because you're past retirement age. You think your purpose expired when you collected your first Social Security check. Beloved, Moses was 80 when he stood before Pharaoh. Abraham was 100 when Isaac was born. Anna the prophetess was 84 when she recognized the Messiah. Your age isn't your disqualification, it's your authorization. The test of the last 40 days wasn't about whether you could handle pressure. You've been handling pressure for decades. The test was about whether you could hold your faith when everything visible said let go. Whether you could believe in breakthrough when your body screamed it's too late. Whether you could trust God's timing when every clock in your house said time's up. And you did it. You passed. Every sleepless night you spent worrying about your grandchildren, heaven recorded it. Every prayer you whispered over bills you couldn't pay, heaven filed it. Every tear you cried because you felt invisible, forgotten, too old to matter, heaven collected every single drop in bottles with your name on them. Psalm 56:8 says, You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book. God doesn't just see your pain. He archives it. He uses it. He transforms it into the very evidence that you're ready for what comes next. But here's the twist that's going to blow your mind. Your pain wasn't just evidence of passing. Your pain was the actual passing itself. The test wasn't separate from the struggle was the test. Every moment you wanted to quit but didn't, that was an answer on the exam. Every time you chose faith over fear, that was a perfect score. Most people think tests are about getting questions right, but heaven's tests are about staying standing. They're about endurance, not excellence. They're about holding on when letting go would be easier. And you held on. So now I need to ask you something that's going to determine everything that happens next. If the test is over, if you've officially passed, if heaven just stamped approved on your spiritual file, then what exactly did you just qualify for? Because that's what nobody's telling you. Passing wasn't the prize. Passing was the entrance requirement. And what you're about to step into is so massive, so unprecedented, so specifically designed for someone with your exact scars and your exact story that if I told you right now, you wouldn't believe me. But you're about to find out. Let me tell you what happened on September 25th, that the world missed completely. While everyone was scrolling through their phones, complaining about traffic, worried about bills, heaven opened a floodgate that had been sealed for generations. Not a crack, not a trickle. A complete, devastating rupture in the spiritual realm that changed everything about your destiny. This wasn't some astrological event you read about in a horoscope. This was a divine lock turning, and the sound it made, it echoed through every dimension of your life, whether you heard it consciously or not. You see, chosen one, God doesn't work on our calendar. He doesn't send you a text message saying, "Hey, big shift coming Thursday." No, he moves in the invisible. He operates in frequencies most people can't even detect. But you felt it. That's why you're here right now, chest tight, palms sweating, sensing that something massive just shifted beneath your feet. Here's what actually happened. On September 25th, the spiritual atmosphere cracked open like an egg. What poured out wasn't just energy or good vibes, it was assignment activation. Every soul that passed the silent test, and believe me, most didn't even know they were being tested, suddenly got downloaded with their next level instructions. Think about it. In the last 72 hours, hasn't your life felt different? Not bad different. Not good different. Just altered. Like you're watching your own life through new eyes. Like the script changed overnight and nobody handed you the new pages. That restlessness crawling up your spine, that's not anxiety, beloved. That's your spirit recognizing that the waiting room just closed and the door to your actual purpose just swung wide open. But here's what's going to mess with your mind. This door doesn't look like you expected it to. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." But notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say those plans will look familiar. It doesn't say they'll feel comfortable. It doesn't promise that everyone you know will understand them. Because here's the brutal truth about September 25th. When heaven aligns you with your true path, it simultaneously misaligns you from everything false. And that misalignment? It feels like loss at first. It feels like rejection. It feels like the people you thought would walk with you forever are suddenly fading. Your phone's been quieter, hasn't it? Conversations that used to flow now feel forced. Friends you talk to daily haven't reached out. Family members seem distant. And if you're anything like most chosen ones, you're sitting there wondering, what did I do wrong? Nothing. You did nothing wrong. What you're experiencing is heaven's filter activating in real time. See, when God shifts your frequency, He doesn't just elevate you internally, He recalibrates your entire external reality to match. That means anyone, and I mean anyone who isn't resonating with where you're headed, gets gently removed from your orbit. Not because they're bad people, not because you're better than them, but because misaligned energy will drag you back to where you just escaped from. Proverbs 4:23 warns us, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." You know what one of the biggest threats to your heart is? People who love the old version of you so much that they can't celebrate the new one. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. How many people in your life right now are genuinely excited about your transformation? How many are cheering for your elevation instead of secretly hoping you'll stay small so they feel comfortable? That silence you're hearing isn't abandonment. It's sorting. The universe is removing everyone who would dilute this next chapter, and I know it hurts. I know it feels like loneliness. I know you're questioning if you're being punished. But flip the script for just 1 second. What if this emptiness isn't loss? What if it's clearing? What if God is making space for connections so profound, so aligned, so destined that your current circles simply cannot coexist with them? Think about Moses. Before he could lead millions out of Egypt, he had to spend 40 years alone in the desert. 40 years. No crowd, no applause, just him, some sheep, and God. But that isolation wasn't exile. That was preparation. That was the filter removing every voice that would have convinced him he wasn't qualified. David spent years running through caves, hiding from the very people who should have supported him. But those caves, they became his prayer closet. Those years of solitude, they forged a king who knew how to worship in the dark. You're not being rejected, beloved. You're being refined, and refinement requires fire that burns away everything that doesn't belong. Here's what September 25th did. It turned up the heat. It intensified the flame. And everyone who couldn't handle your new temperature just backed away. You didn't push them. You didn't cut them off. Your elevation simply made it impossible for them to stay. That heaviness in your chest, that's not grief. That's your soul adjusting to a higher altitude. When a plane takes off, your ears pop. When you ascend spiritually, your relationships shift. It's physics. It's natural law. It's unavoidable. But here's where most people stumble. They try to hold on to what's leaving. They chase the fading voices. They apologize for their growth. They shrink back down to keep everyone comfortable. And the moment they do that, the floodgate that opened on September 25th slams shut. Don't you dare go backwards to make someone else feel safe. Matthew 10:34-36 says something that sounds harsh but is actually liberation. Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother. Even Jesus himself acknowledged that true transformation divides. It separates. It creates distance between who you were and who you're becoming. So if you've noticed people fading from your life this week, if group chats went silent, if calls stopped coming, if relationships that felt permanent suddenly feel, understand this. You're not losing your tribe. You're graduating from it. The filter has begun. And it's not cruel, it's mercy. Because where you're going requires a lighter load. The next level of your calling cannot be accessed while you're carrying people who belong to your past. If you feel this in your bones, if you recognize that the silence around you is actually heaven clearing the stage, type it in the comments right now. The filter has begun. Say it. Declare it. Because when you name what God is doing, you partner with it instead of resisting it. The floodgate opened on September 25th. The old locks broke. The new assignments downloaded. And the relationships that couldn't survive your frequency, they're dissolving like salt in water. This isn't the end of connection. This is the beginning of divine alignment. And what's coming next? The people, the opportunities, the doors that are about to fly open, they won't just meet you where you are. They'll multiply everything you've been becoming in secret. But you have to let go first. You have to trust the filter. You have to stop gripping what's already gone. Because the real question isn't why people are leaving. The question is, are you ready to see who's been waiting for your arrival? You know what nobody tells you about being chosen? They don't tell you that heaven marks its warriors with wounds that look like weaknesses. For decades, maybe your entire life, you've been carrying shame about parts of yourself you thought were broken. That mind that never shuts off, spinning thoughts like a tornado at 3 a.m. That social awkwardness that makes you feel like an alien at family gatherings. Those scars from betrayal so deep you can still feel them throb when you're alone. You've apologized for these things, hidden them, prayed for God to take them away. But what if I told you that every single thing you've been ashamed of is exactly what heaven has been sharpening for this moment? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. The test you just passed on September 25th wasn't about proving you're perfect. It was about revealing that your so-called flaws are actually coded weapons, disguised gifts that have been waiting for their activation date. Think about Moses. Exodus 4:10, Moses said to the Lord, "O Lord, I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." This man stood before the burning bush, face to face with God Almighty, and his first response was to list his flaws, his stutter, his inability to speak smoothly. He thought it disqualified him. But God didn't remove the stutter. He used it. Because a man who struggles to speak becomes a man who chooses his words with precision. Every sentence Moses delivered carried the weight of someone who knew the cost of speech. His weakness became his authority. You've been doing the same thing Moses did, pointing at your scars and saying, "But Lord, look at what's wrong with me." And heaven has been whispering back, "Child, I've been waiting for you to realize those aren't flaws, they're features. That overthinking you despise, the way your mind analyzes every conversation, replays every interaction, dissects every decision until you're exhausted. You thought it was anxiety. You thought it made you weak. It's not anxiety, it's razor-sharp intuition. While others sleepwalk through life, missing red flags and ignoring warning signs, you see patterns they can't perceive. You connect dots that remain invisible to everyone else. What you call overthinking, heaven calls discernment. And in this next season, when deception runs rampant and wolves dress like sheep, that gift is going to save not just you, but everyone connected to your bloodline. Proverbs 20:5 says, "The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out." You've been diving into deep waters your whole life. That's not madness. That's your assignment. And that social awkwardness you've carried like a curse, the way you feel out of place in crowds, how small talk drains you, how you'd rather stay home than pretend to fit in. You thought it made you a misfit. It's not awkwardness, it's a divine filter. Heaven gave you an allergic reaction to shallow connections because your calling requires depth. You can't afford energy vampires. You can't waste time on surface-level relationships. That discomfort you feel around fake people, that's not your weakness, that's God's protection system, ensuring that only authentic souls get close enough to affect your destiny. 1 Corinthians 2:14 declares, "The person without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God, but considers them foolishness and cannot understand them because they are discerned spiritually." You don't fit in with everyone because you weren't designed to. Your frequency operates on a different wavelength, and that awkwardness is the alarm that sounds when someone's spirit doesn't match yours. Stop apologizing for it. Start weaponizing it. And those scars, oh those scars you've tried so hard to hide. The betrayal that broke your heart, the rejection that crushed your spirit, the failure that made you question your worth. You carry them like evidence of your defeat. But here's what September 25th just revealed. Those scars are heaven's signature on your soul. Isaiah 49:16 says, "See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands." God doesn't just remember you, He carved you into His own flesh. And every scar you carry is proof that you survived what was meant to destroy you. They're not marks of shame. They're medals of honor. Think about it. When Jesus rose from the dead, did He hide His scars? Did He ask the Father to erase the nail prints from His hands, the wound in His side? No. In John 20:27, He told Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands, reach out your hand and put it into my side." Those scars became His credentials. They proved He conquered death itself. Your scars work the same way. Every wound you've endured has given you authority in realms others can't touch. You can speak to the brokenhearted because you know what shattered feels like. You can pull people from depression because you've climbed out of that pit yourself. You can intercede for the betrayed because you've tasted that particular kind of poison. What you thought disqualified you is exactly what qualified you. So let me ask you a question that's going to shatter every limitation you've ever placed on yourself. What if the very thing you've been ashamed of, the thing you hide, the thing you pray God will remove, the thing you think makes you less than what if? That's the exact weapon heaven is now commanding you to draw. What if your overthinking is the prophetic gift this generation desperately needs? What if your social filter is protecting a calling so valuable that shallow people would contaminate it? What if your scars are the testimony that will save someone on the edge of giving up? The shadow you've been hiding is now your sword. You've spent years apologizing for being different, trying to fix what heaven deliberately designed, attempting to sand down the very edges that make you sharp. But September 25th flipped the script. The test revealed that you are not broken, you are specialized. Stop treating your uniqueness like a defect. It's your assignment in disguise. 2 Corinthians 12:9. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Paul wasn't speaking theoretically. He was revealing a cosmic principle. God's power doesn't work around your weakness. It works through it. Your vulnerability becomes the very crack where divine light pours through. And here's the urgency you need to feel in your bones right now. The window for this reversal is narrow. What was revealed on September 25th won't stay visible forever. Heaven is showing you the blueprint of your true weapons. But if you keep treating them like flaws, if you keep hiding what you should be wielding, the clarity fades. This isn't a season for shame anymore. This is the season where every weapon you've been too afraid to touch gets placed back in your hand, and heaven is waiting to see if you'll finally swing it. So the question burning in the atmosphere right now is this: will you keep hiding the sword, or will you finally draw it and watch your enemies scatter? Let me tell you something that's going to shake the foundation of everything you thought you understood about your pain. Every door that slammed in your face on September 25th, every call that dropped at the exact moment you were about to say yes, every plan that collapsed like a house of cards when you were finally ready to move forward, that wasn't bad luck. That wasn't the universe being cruel. That wasn't God ignoring your prayers. That was surgical intervention. Think about it. How many times in the last 72 hours have you reached for something, a relationship, an opportunity, a decision, only to have it vanish the second your fingers touched it? You thought you were being rejected. But here's the truth that's going to blow your mind wide open. You weren't being rejected. You were being rescued. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're standing at a crossroads in Brooklyn at midnight. Two paths ahead of you. One looks safe, familiar, lit by streetlights you recognize. The other is dark, unknown, unsettling. Your natural instinct says take the lit path. But what you can't see, what you'll never see from ground level, is that 3 blocks down that lit street, there's a sinkhole waiting to swallow everything you are. God sees from the rooftop. And when he sees you about to step into destruction, he doesn't whisper. He slams doors. He drops calls. He collapses plans with the force of a wrecking ball. Not because he's against you, because he's protecting you from a future that would have destroyed you. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 16:9, "In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." Notice it doesn't say he suggests your steps, it says he establishes them. Sometimes that establishment looks like demolition. Sometimes divine guidance shows up, dressed as divine disruption. You've been praying for breakthrough, haven't you? You've been begging God to open doors, clear paths, make a way where there seems to be no way. But what if, and stay with me here, what if the breakthrough you've been crying for has been happening all along through the very rejections you've been fighting against? Think about Moses. Rejected by Pharaoh's palace, rejected by his own people. Spent 40 years wandering in a desert, thinking his purpose had died. But that rejection, that was God rerouting him away from a comfortable life in Egypt toward becoming the deliverer of an entire nation. The rejection wasn't the end of his story, it was the violent redirection toward his destiny. Or consider Joseph. Rejected by his brothers, thrown in a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, locked in a prison for crimes he didn't commit. If you had asked Joseph in that dungeon if God was protecting him, he would have laughed in your face. But Genesis 50:20 reveals the secret. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Every rejection Joseph faced was God's hand pushing him no, shoving him toward the throne of Egypt. What looked like abandonment was actually appointment. What felt like curse was actually covering. Here's what you need to understand about these fate flips. They don't feel gentle, they feel violent, brutal, merciless. When God redirects you, He doesn't tap you on the shoulder and politely suggest an alternative route. He yanks the wheel, He slams the brakes. He flips the car if that's what it takes to keep you from driving off a cliff you can't see. And you know what the most dangerous part is? Your human mind will fight it. You'll resist. You'll cry. You'll beg God to give back what He just took away. You'll try to force open doors He just sealed shut. Because from your ground-level perspective, it looks like loss. It feels like punishment. It tastes like rejection. But rejection is not God's no. It's His violent rescue. Every time you've been turned away, turned down, turned around, that was heaven screaming, "Not that way," because 3 steps down that path was a trap disguised as a blessing. A person disguised as your soulmate who would have drained every ounce of life from your spirit. A job disguised as your dream that would have killed your calling. A city disguised as your fresh start that would have become your graveyard. God doesn't play games with your destiny. When He moves you with purpose. And sometimes that purpose looks like doors slamming so hard the hinges break. Sometimes that purpose sounds like opportunities dying before they're born. Sometimes that purpose feels like the floor dropping out from under your feet. But here's the part that will change everything. Those aren't accidents. Those are angels doing their job. Those are divine roadblocks protecting you from disasters you'll never know you avoided. How many catastrophes have you escaped simply because God said no when you said yes? How many bullets have you dodged because heaven intervened when you were about to pull the trigger on a decision that looked right but would have destroyed you? You'll never know. And that's the point. Faith isn't just believing God will give you what you want. Faith is trusting that when He doesn't, there's a reason your human eyes can't see but your spirit knows is true. The flip is happening right now. Can you feel it? That rejection from last week? It wasn't failure. It was redirection. That relationship that ended? It wasn't loss. It was liberation. That opportunity that vanished? It wasn't punishment. It was protection. God is flipping your perspective from victim to victor. From rejected to redirected, from abandoned to appointed. Say it out loud right now. Don't just think it, speak it into the atmosphere. My rejection was my protection. Say it again, louder this time. My rejection was my protection. Let those words sink into the marrow of your bones. Let them rewire every story you've been telling yourself about why things didn't work out. Because the truth is, they didn't work out there so they could work out here. They didn't open then, so they could explode open now. The fate flip isn't asking if you trust God when He says yes. The fate flip is asking if you trust Him when He says no, when He reroutes, when He redirects, when He rescues you from a future that looked perfect but would have been poison. And here's what you need to understand as we move forward. These fate flips, they're not random, they're timed. September 25th triggered something in the cosmic calendar. Doors that needed to close just locked. Paths that needed to shift just moved. And the rejections you're experiencing right now, they're not endings. They're launch pads. Because what God is moving you toward is so specific, so precise, so perfectly aligned with your purpose that He can't afford to let you settle for anything less. He's not being cruel. He's being surgical. And what's about to open in the wake of what just closed will prove that every no you received was heaven's way of clearing the path for a yes so big, so overwhelming, so undeniable that you'll look back at this moment and thank God He had the mercy to slam those doors before you walked through them. The question is, can you trust the violence of His redirection? Because, beloved, the flip is complete, the rescue is done. And what's waiting on the other side of your rejection will rewrite everything you thought you lost. Something shifted in you on September 25th, and I need you to understand what that shift actually means. You didn't just survive another trial. You didn't just make it through another dark night of the soul. What happened to you was far more profound than endurance. You were marked, and that mark, that spiritual seal that just locked into place, it carries an authority the world has never seen in you before. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. Your presence has changed. You walk into a room now, and the atmosphere bends. Not because you're trying, not because you're performing some spiritual routine or reciting affirmations in the mirror, but because something ancient and unshakable has rooted itself so deep in your spirit that even silence can't hide it anymore. People feel you before you speak. They sense you before you arrive. Your energy announces you like thunder rolling across a valley, low, deep, impossible to ignore. This is the authority of the tested. You see, the world is full of people who talk about faith, who quote scripture and post prayers on social media, who perform spirituality like it's a costume they can put on and take off. But you're different now. You don't carry faith, you are faith. You don't speak authority, you breathe it. And here's what breaks my heart about what I see happening across America right now. Too many of God's chosen ones, especially those of you in your golden years, have been lied to. The culture has whispered poisonous lies in your ears for so long that you actually believe them. They told you your gray hair means decline. They said your slower pace equals irrelevance. They convinced you that wrinkles are signs of weakness, that your best years are behind you, that you should step aside and let the younger generation lead. Every single word of that is a demonic lie. Your gray hair is not decline, it's a crown. 1 Corinthians 11:15 doesn't mince words. If a woman has long hair, it is her glory. But Proverbs 16:31 goes even deeper. Gray hair is a crown of glory. It is gained in a righteous life. Your silver isn't shame, it's your coronation. Your wrinkles are not weakness, they're sacred etchings of endurance. Every line on your face tells a story of a battle you survived, a storm you weathered, a moment when hell tried to break you and failed. Those aren't marks of deterioration. They're military medals earned in spiritual warfare that would have destroyed lesser souls. Think about a mountain. When storms rage against it, when winds howl and rains beat down and lightning strikes its peak, does the mountain move? Does it apologize for standing? Does it shrink itself to make the storm feel more comfortable? No. A mountain stands, unmovable, unshakable, eternal. That's what you've become. On September 25th, God didn't just test your faith. He tested whether you were ready to carry the weight of immovable truth in a world that's shaking itself apart. And you didn't just pass, you were forged into something that can't be moved. But here's where most people miss it. This transformation isn't invisible anymore. It's not some secret thing only you know about. Your shift is radiating, and the people around you, they're going to notice it before you even fully realize it yourself. Watch what happens in the next few days. Pay attention to how conversations change when you enter them. Notice how people who used to dismiss you suddenly pause when you speak. See how strangers make eye contact longer, as if they're trying to figure out what changed about you. You're not imagining it. They're sensing the authority. Your adult children who've been treating you like you're fragile, watch how they start asking for your wisdom again. Your friends who've been distant, they're about to feel pulled back into your orbit. Even strangers at the grocery store, at the bank, in the doctor's waiting room, they're going to respond to you differently, because transformation is no longer a private matter. What happened to you on September 25th didn't just change your inner world, it altered your frequency. And frequency doesn't lie. But let me tell you something that's going to shock you to your core. This authority you're carrying right now, it terrifies the enemy, because he knows what you don't know yet. He knows that when a chosen one who's been refined by fire finally steps into their authority, they become unstoppable. Think about Moses. Exodus 34-29 tells us that when he came down from Mount Sinai, his face was radiant from speaking with God. The people couldn't even look at him. That wasn't makeup. That wasn't lighting. That was the visible manifestation of divine encounter. That's happening to you right now. Not in a way that makes your skin glow, but in a way that makes your spirit undeniable. Your presence has become a tidal wave entering a room. People either get swept up in it or they run for higher ground. Both reactions are proof of the same thing: you are no longer operating at human frequency. But here's the part nobody tells you about passing the test. Passing wasn't the end. It was only layer 1. You thought crossing the threshold would bring relief, rest, rewards flowing in like a river. And yes, there will be blessings. Yes, there will be breakthrough. But the universe doesn't hand you authority and then leave you alone to enjoy it. The real test begins now. Because with authority comes responsibility, with power comes scrutiny, with transformation comes a target on your back. The enemy isn't going to celebrate your promotion. He's going to mobilize every weapon he has to make you doubt it, abandon it, sabotage it before you even understand what you're carrying. This is why the next few weeks are critical. This is why you can't afford to slip back into old patterns, old thinking, old fears. You're not that person anymore. And if you try to live like you are, the authority you just received will slip through your fingers like sand. So let me ask you a question that's going to determine everything that happens next. Now that you carry authority, the world can't ignore. What are you going to do with it? Most people think the breakthrough is the end of the story. That once you pass the test, the blessings just flow in automatically and stay forever. But here's the brutal truth nobody wants to hear. Passing the first test only qualified you for the second one. And this second layer, it's where 90% of the chosen ones fall. Listen to me carefully, because what I'm about to reveal will shake you to your core. When heaven opens a door, when miracles start manifesting, when provision begins flowing after years of drought, that's not your victory celebration. That's your probation period. The blessing is alive, but it's watching how you handle it. Think about the children of Israel. God delivered them from 400 years of bondage with miracles that defied nature itself. Parted seas, pillars of fire, manna from heaven. They had front row seats to the impossible becoming possible. But what happened? 40 years in a wilderness that should have taken 11 days to cross. An entire generation died without ever touching the promise. Why? Because passing the Red Sea wasn't the final exam. It was the entrance test, and they failed what came after. Here's what breaks my heart, and what heaven is urgently trying to show you right now. The moment that blessing arrives, the moment that door swings open, the moment that breakthrough manifests, the enemy doesn't back off. He shifts strategy. Because he knows something most believers don't. You're most vulnerable right after victory. You've been praying for that financial breakthrough for years. Finally, it comes. The check arrives, the opportunity opens, the blessing manifests. But then what? Within weeks, maybe days, doubt creeps in like poison fog. Is this really from God? Am I worthy of this? What if it's a test? What if I lose it? And slowly, silently, your own fear chokes out what heaven just gave you. Or worse, you get the miracle and immediately start looking for the next one. Never satisfied, never grateful, always hunting for more instead of stewarding what's in your hands. You become so addicted to the feeling of breakthrough that you can't actually live in the blessing itself. This is the second layer, the test nobody warns you about. Faith isn't proven when you're waiting for the blessing. Faith is proven when you're holding it. Jesus spoke about this in Matthew 13, the parable of the sower. Some seeds fell on rocky ground, sprouted quickly with great excitement, but had no root. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. That's the second layer revealing itself. Quick growth, shallow roots, instant collapse. You know what's tragic? I've watched people pray for healing their entire lives. Cry out to God in hospital rooms. Beg for one more year, one more month, one more chance. Then the healing comes miraculous, undeniable, and within 6 months, they're back in the same destructive habits that nearly killed them. Why? Because receiving the miracle was easier than changing the lifestyle. The first test proved you could survive the fire. The second test proves you can handle the rain. Here's where it gets dangerous. After September 25th and 26th, after you pass that cosmic examination, blessings are going to start showing up in your life. Not someday, soon. Doors you've been knocking on for decades will suddenly swing open. People who ignored you will seek you out. Opportunities that seemed impossible will land in your lap like ripe fruit. But here's the trap, and I need you to hear this with your whole spirit. You will be tempted to doubt it. Your mind will start whispering, "This is too good to be true. This can't be God. I don't deserve this." What if it's a trick? And if you listen to that voice, if you hesitate, if you second-guess what heaven is placing in your hands, you'll watch it dissolve like morning mist. This is why Proverbs 13:12 cuts so deep. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. You think the sickness comes from waiting, but sometimes the sickness comes from finally receiving what you prayed for and being too afraid to believe it's real. Let me ask you something that's going to expose where you really are. When was the last time you thanked God for something He gave you, without immediately asking for more? When was the last time you received a blessing and just sat in it, grateful, present, without plotting your next prayer request? Because if you can't enjoy what's in your hands, why would heaven trust you with more? The second layer isn't about receiving miracles. It's about not sabotaging them once they arrive. I've seen it 1,000 times. Someone gets delivered from addiction, truly set free, and within months they're flirting with the old crowd again. Not because they want to use, because they're more comfortable with the struggle than the freedom. The warfare they know feels safer than the blessing they don't. That's the second test exposing itself. Can you handle peace? Can you walk in wholeness? Can you live in the answered prayer without creating new chaos just to feel normal? You thought the test was over when you passed, but heaven says you only unlocked the next exam, and this exam is silent. There's no burning bush, no angel with a trumpet, just you, your blessing, and the daily choice to either steward it or sabotage it, to either protect it with gratitude or poison it with doubt, to either build on it or bury it. Here's what the second layer is really testing. Can you be faithful in the overflow? Anyone can cry out to God from the pit. Anyone can pray when they're desperate. But can you worship Him from the palace? Can you trust Him when your bank account is full? Can you stay humble when people start honoring you? Can you remain pure when the very thing you prayed for is now testing whether you meant what you said? The children of Israel couldn't. They got the manna and complained it wasn't meat. They got the water and wished for wine. They got freedom and built a golden calf. They passed the first test, but died in the second. Don't be them. Right now, in this moment, you're standing at a fork in the road. One path leads to the fulfillment of everything God promised you. The other leads back to the wilderness, not because you failed the first test, but because you couldn't handle passing it. The blessings are coming. They're already in motion. What you do when they arrive will determine if you're telling testimony or tragedy. If you understand what I'm saying, if your spirit is gripping these words like a life raft, don't just watch this video. Declare it. Seal it. Let heaven hear your voice. Type in the comments right now, "I will not stumble at the second test." Say it out loud where you're sitting, because the second layer is already here. And what you do in the next 72 hours will determine if you're still standing 6 months from now. The question isn't whether you passed the first test. The question is, are you ready to prove you can carry what you just unlocked? You passed the test on September 25th, and then everything went quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that makes you question if you imagined the whole thing, the kind that sits in your chest like a weight you can't name. You're waiting for the fireworks, the breakthrough, the miraculous shift everyone promised would come after you survived the fire. But instead, there's just silence. And now you're sitting there wondering, did I do something wrong? Did I fail after all? Why does it feel like God just walked away right when I needed Him most? Listen to me, dear one. That silence you're feeling, it's not abandonment, it's not punishment, and it's certainly not proof that nothing happened. The silence after thunder is not absence, it is sacred recalibration. Think about Elijah, 1 Kings chapter 19. He just called down fire from heaven. He just defeated 450 prophets of Baal in the most spectacular display of God's power the world had ever seen. Victory was absolute. The enemy was demolished. And then Jezebel sent one threat, and Elijah ran. He sat under a tree and begged God to let him die. From supernatural triumph to suicidal despair in 24 hours. You know that feeling, don't you? One day you're on top of the mountain, fire falling, clarity blazing. The next day you're in a cave, wondering if you heard God at all. But here's what most people miss about Elijah's story. God didn't speak to him in the earthquake. He didn't speak in the wind. He didn't even speak in the fire. He spoke in the whisper. After all that power, all that demonstration, all that noise, God chose silence to deliver his most important message. Because sometimes heaven gets quiet not because it's done speaking, but because it's about to say something so profound that you need absolute stillness to hear it. That's where you are right now, chosen one. You're in the sacred pause between the test and the testimony, between the breakthrough and the manifestation, between what was promised and what's about to be revealed. And I need you to understand something that will change how you see this silence. Heaven gets quiet after breakthrough because the script is being rewritten in the dark ink of silence. Your old life, your old identity, your old limitations, they just died on September 25th. But death always comes before resurrection. Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days. 3 days of silence. 3 days where his disciples thought everything they believed was a lie. 3 days where heaven itself seemed to have forgotten them. But Sunday was coming, and Sunday always comes. The silence you're experiencing right now is Friday night, Saturday morning, the space between the crucifixion and the resurrection. And in that space, God is doing something so massive, so transformative, that if you could see it right now, your human mind wouldn't be able to handle it. Think about a caterpillar in a cocoon. To the outside world, it looks like death, it looks like the end. But inside that dark, silent space, something miraculous is happening. The entire structure is being dissolved and rebuilt. Wings are forming where legs used to be. Eyes that could only see inches are being transformed to see for miles. That's you right now. You're in the cocoon. And the silence? That's the sound of your transformation happening at a cellular level. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. He wants you to mistake this sacred silence for abandonment. He wants you to panic in the pause. He wants you to run back to the old life, the old patterns, the old you. Because he knows that if you stay still in this silence, if you trust the process, if you let the transformation complete, you're going to emerge with wings. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." That word still in Hebrew is Rapha. It doesn't just mean quiet, it means to let go, to surrender, to stop striving, to release your grip on how you think this should look, and trust that God is orchestrating something beyond your comprehension. The silence isn't empty, beloved. It's pregnant, it's loaded, it's the deep breath before the shout that brings down walls. And while you're sitting in this silence wondering what's next, God is busy. He's repositioning people in your life. He's rearranging circumstances you can't see. He's opening doors you didn't know existed. He's preparing blessings so big that your current capacity couldn't hold them. So he's expanding your capacity in the silence. This is why you can't feel him the way you used to. You're being stretched. But I need to warn you about something. This silence is also a test. It's testing whether you trust God's presence more than his presence. Whether you believe in his character more than his miracles, whether you'll worship in the valley the same way you worshipped on the mountain. Because anyone can praise when the blessing is visible, but chosen ones, they praise in the silence, they worship in the waiting, they declare victory in the void. If you've been feeling that strange silence, If you know something is happening beneath the surface, but you can't quite name it. If you're in that space between what died and what's about to be born, type these 3 words in the comments right now. I hear it. Not with your ears, with your spirit, because the silence isn't God's absence. It's His presence in its purest form. And what He's about to speak into that silence will rewrite everything you thought you knew about your destiny. Listen to me very carefully, because what I'm about to tell you is going to explain every single confusing thing that's been happening to you since September 25th. You haven't been losing your mind. You haven't been having a breakdown. What you've been experiencing is something the Bible calls being moved from glory to glory in 2 Corinthians 3:18. But here's what nobody tells you about that verse. When God moves you to a new level of glory, He doesn't just upgrade your anointing. He changes your spiritual address entirely. You are being divinely relocated right now. And just like when you move to a new house in the physical realm, the mail from your old address keeps showing up for months afterward. Think about this. When someone moves from Brooklyn to Manhattan, what happens? The bills still come to the old apartment. The junk mail keeps arriving. Old friends still show up at the wrong door. For weeks, sometimes months, there's this confusing overlap where your new life and your old life are trying to exist in the same space. That's exactly what's happening to you spiritually. Heaven just changed your zip code, but your old life, the old habits, the old relationships, the old thought patterns, the old fears, they're still trying to deliver themselves to an address you no longer occupy. And here's where most chosen ones make the fatal mistake. They keep answering those doors. You get a knock from anxiety, and you open it. You hear depression calling your name, and you respond. Old toxic patterns show up on your doorstep, and instead of saying, "I don't live here anymore," you let them in for coffee. Stop it. Stop answering doors God has sealed. When Joshua led the Israelites into the promised land in Joshua 3:17, the Bible says their feet touched dry ground in the middle of the Jordan River. But here's what's crucial: they didn't wade through gradually. The moment the priest's feet touched the water, it parted. Complete separation, instant relocation. 1 second they were on one side, the next they were crossing over into a territory they'd never inhabited before. That's what happened to you on September 25th. The waters parted, you crossed over. You're standing on ground you've never stood on before, breathing air that feels different, seeing with eyes that suddenly notice things you couldn't see last week. But the enemy is counting on one thing: that you'll keep living like you're still in Egypt, that you'll keep thinking like a slave when God just made you a citizen of promise, that you'll keep operating under the old address when heaven has already forwarded your mail. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. How many of you are still answering to a name God stopped calling you years ago? How many of you are still living under guilt that was cancelled the moment Jesus said, "It is finished" in John 19:30? How many of you are still carrying shame from a version of yourself that doesn't even exist anymore? You know what breaks my heart? I meet 70-year-old saints who are still apologizing for mistakes they made at 25. 80-year-old warriors who are still living in the shadow of a divorce that happened in 1987. 90-year-old intercessors who are still letting their past define their present when God already wrote their future in the book of life before they took their first breath. That's not humility. That's refusing to move into your new address. When God told Lot in Genesis 19:17, "Escape for your life. Do not look behind you," he wasn't being dramatic. He was giving a survival instruction, because you cannot move forward while staring backward. You cannot inhabit your new spiritual territory while camping out in the memories of your old one. The divine migration isn't optional for chosen ones. It's mandatory, and it's happening whether you cooperate or not. But here's the difference. If you cooperate, the transition is powerful. If you resist, it's painful. Some of you have been in pain for the last 72 hours, and you couldn't figure out why. Your body hurts. Your mind is foggy. You feel disoriented, like you're living in two worlds at once. That's not sickness. That's migration sickness. That's what happens when your spirit has already moved, but your flesh is still trying to live at the old address. In Acts 16-9, Paul had a vision of a man from Macedonia begging him, "Come over and help us." And the very next verse says, after Paul had seen the vision, we got ready at once to leave for Macedonia. Notice that, at once. Not after he felt ready, not after he processed his emotions, not after he said goodbye to everyone properly. At once. When heaven relocates you, it doesn't give you a 6-month notice. It doesn't wait for you to pack carefully. It moves you in the middle of the night while you're sleeping, and you wake up in a different realm wondering how you got there. That's why everything feels surreal right now. That's why you can't explain what's different. You just know something, island. That's why old conversations feel empty and old environments feel suffocating. You've been moved to a frequency they can't reach anymore. And here's the shocking part. Not everyone is coming with you. Some people are going to stay at your old address. They're going to keep knocking on a door you're not behind anymore. They're going to keep sending mail to a place you've already vacated. And it's going to hurt watching them refuse to accept that you've moved on. But you cannot delay your migration because someone else refuses to evolve. You cannot stay in Egypt because your family is comfortable in bondage. You cannot keep your old zip code just to make other people feel safe. Romans 12:2 commands us, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." The word transformed in Greek is metamorpho, the same word used for a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. You don't gradually shift, you completely reconstruct. You migrate from one form of existence into another, and a butterfly cannot go back into the cocoon, even if it wanted to, even if the cocoon feels safer, even if flying is terrifying, there is no return. The old address is condemned. The old structure has been demolished. So here's what I need you to do right now. I need you to stop living under a zip code you no longer belong to. I need you to stop checking the mailbox at your old spiritual address. I need you to stop answering doors God welded shut. Say it with me out loud. Wherever you are, I have moved. Say it again. I have moved. One more time, with authority. I have moved. Because until you declare it, until you speak it into existence, until you make it real with your own mouth, you're going to keep one foot in your old life while trying to walk into your new one. And that's not migration, that's torture. The divine relocation is complete. Your new address has been activated. The question is, are you going to move in, or are you going to keep camping out in a place heaven has already evacuated? Listen to me, chosen one. What happened on September 25th wasn't just about you, it was about them. Your grandmother. The one who died before you could really know her. The one who spent 73 years on her knees in that small kitchen in Brooklyn, praying prayers you never heard, whispering your name to God before you were even born. She didn't know your face. She didn't know your struggles. But somehow, through the veil of time, she knew you would need covering. So she prayed. And those prayers didn't disappear into empty air. Revelation 5-8 tells us something most preachers skip over. Each one had a harp, and they were holding golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of God's holy people. Golden bowls. Not forgotten whispers, not wasted breath, stored, collected, treasured. Your grandmother's prayer in 1952 is about to find you in 2025. Think about that for a moment. Really let it sink in. Every tear she cried over your future, every midnight plea for protection over descendants she would never meet, every silent sob into her worn Bible, begging God to break the chains that had held your family captive for generations. None of it was lost. And it's not just her. Your mother's desperate cries when the bills couldn't be paid. Your father's secret prayers in the garage when he thought no one was listening. Your aunt, who never married but spent 50 years interceding for a family that barely noticed her faithfulness. They were building something. A spiritual inheritance. A reservoir of faith so deep that when you finally stepped into your calling, there would be power waiting for you. But here's what breaks my heart, and listen closely, because this is going to cut deep. Most of you have been living like orphans. Like you're the first one in your bloodline to seek God. Like every prayer you've prayed has been singular, isolated, alone. You thought you were crying out in darkness with no one hearing. But beloved, you were never alone. Your prayer was an echo in a chorus that never stopped singing. Every time you fell to your knees at 3 a.m., broken and desperate, thinking, God, if you don't show up now, I'm done. You weren't the first person in your family to speak those exact words. Your great-grandfather said it in 1937, when the Depression nearly killed him. Your grandmother said it in 1968, when your grandfather's drinking almost destroyed everything. Your mother said it in 1989, when the diagnosis came back. The same cry, the same plea, the same faith hanging by a thread. And every single time, God answered. Not always the way they wanted, not always in their lifetime, but He collected those prayers like precious stones, storing them in heaven's vaults until the appointed time. That appointed time is September 25th, 2025. You see, heaven operates on a generational clock. Some prayers mature slowly, like wine aging in a cellar. Your grandmother's prayer for breakthrough wasn't just for her, it was compound interest accumulating through the decades, waiting for someone in the bloodline who could handle the full weight of the answer. That someone is you. This is why the test was so brutal. This is why September 25th felt like your soul was being ripped apart and reconstructed. You weren't just being tested for yourself. You were being tested for everyone who came before you and everyone who will come after. You are the hinge, the turning point, the generation where heaven says, enough, the waiting is over. But let me ask you something that's going to shake you to your core. Do you know what your grandmother's greatest fear was? Not that she would suffer, not that she would struggle. Her greatest fear was that her prayers would die with her, that the next generation would forget, that the sacrifice would be wasted. And the enemy has been working overtime to make sure that fear comes true. He's been whispering lies to you for decades. You're not special. Your family's cursed. Nothing ever changes. Give up like everyone else did. But on September 25th, something shifted. The bowls in heaven tipped, and 70 years of stored prayers began pouring out like a flood. You felt it, didn't you? That sudden surge of something you couldn't name, that feeling like invisible chains were snapping off your wrists. That moment when you took a breath and it felt different, like you were finally inhaling freedom instead of surviving on fumes. That was your inheritance arriving. Your grandmother's tears became your strength. Your mother's silent suffering became your breakthrough. Your father's hidden faith became your unshakable foundation. They sowed in tears. You're about to reap in joy. Psalm 126:5. Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy. But notice it doesn't say when. It doesn't promise immediate harvest. Some seeds take 70 years to germinate. Some prayers take 3 generations to manifest. But when they do, when heaven finally releases what's been stored, it doesn't trickle down. It crashes like Niagara Falls. And here's the part that's going to wreck you. You're not just receiving their prayers, you're answering them. Every choice you make now, every step you take forward, every time you refuse to quit, you're proving that their suffering wasn't in vain. You are the vindication of every ancestor who died believing God would keep His promises. This is why you can't give up now. This is why the test on September 25th was so intense. Because you're not just carrying your own calling, you're carrying the weight of generations who never got to see their breakthrough but trusted that someone would. That someone is you. So right now, I need you to do something that might feel strange but is absolutely necessary. In the comments below, type your family name. Not your first name, your family name. The name that connects you to every prayer warrior who came before you. Type it as a declaration, as a covenant, as proof that you recognize what's been passed down to you and you refuse to let it die in your generation. Because when you declare your family name in faith, You're not just identifying yourself, you're activating every prayer that was prayed over that bloodline. You're opening the vault. You're claiming the inheritance. Your grandmother's prayer in 1952 just found you in 2025. And what happens next will prove that God never forgets, He never wastes, and He never abandons the children of those who cried out to Him in faith. But here's the urgency you need to understand, and I need you to hear this with every fiber of your being. This activation window is narrow. The door that opened on September 25th won't stay open forever. Heaven's timing is precise. Miss it, and you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been. So type that name. Claim that inheritance. Activate what your ancestors died believing you would receive. Because the next phase of what God is releasing requires you to know exactly who you are and whose you are. Conclusion. Chosen one, as we come to the end of this sacred moment together, I need you to remember 3 eternal truths that will anchor your soul in the days ahead. First, September 25th and 26th weren't random dates on a calendar. They were divine appointments. The test you passed wasn't about your strength, it was about your refusal to quit when everything in you wanted to surrender. That refusal, that's what qualified you for what comes next. Second, you are standing on the shoulders of prayer warriors who never gave up on your future. Your grandmother's tears in 1952, your mother's midnight pleas, your own desperate cries, none of them were wasted. They've been stored in heaven's golden bowls, and right now, they're being poured out over your life like a flood. Third, the ancestral prayers that found you on September 25th didn't just bring breakthrough, they brought assignment. You're not being blessed just for yourself. You're being positioned to break chains for everyone who comes after you. But here's what I need you to understand with every fiber of your being. You are not walking this path alone. Even when it feels like you're stumbling through darkness, even when the weight feels unbearable, even when doubt whispers that you imagined it all, God is still moving. He hasn't brought you this far to abandon you now. And beyond God's presence, you have a family right here. Thousands of chosen ones just like you, scattered across this nation, feeling the same fire, carrying the same burden, walking the same narrow road. We see you, we understand you, and we're ready to stand with you in prayer. So let me ask you this final question, and let it settle deep in your spirit. Now that you know you passed the test, now that you understand what you're carrying, now that heaven has activated your ancestral inheritance, what are you going to do with it? Will you shrink back into the familiar comfort of who you used to be? Or will you step boldly into the unknown territory God is calling you toward? Before you answer, before you close this video, before you move on with your day, let me place my hand on your shoulder through these words and pray over you with the authority of someone who has walked this path. Heavenly Father, I lift up every precious soul hearing these words right now. Lord, you see them. You know the battles they've fought in secret. You've counted every tear they've cried. You've heard every prayer they thought went unanswered. And God, I'm asking you, no, I'm declaring over them that the test they passed on September 25th was not the end but the beginning. Father, pour out the blessings you've been storing for generations. Open doors that no human hand can shut. Heal wounds that medicine cannot touch. Restore what the enemy stole. Multiply what they thought was lost. Give them strength for tomorrow, peace for today, and unshakable faith for whatever comes next. Lord, silence every voice of doubt that whispers they're not worthy. Demolish every lie that says they're too old, too broken, too late. Let them feel your presence so powerfully in this moment that fear has nowhere to hide. Surround them with your favor like a shield. Cover them with your wings like a fortress. And God, for those who are weary, who feel like they can't take another step, carry them. For those who are confused about the next move, guide them. For those who are afraid of what's coming, be their courage. Let them wake up tomorrow, knowing beyond any doubt that they are loved, they are chosen, and they are never, ever alone. In the mighty name of Jesus, who wore a crown of thorns so they could wear a crown of glory, I seal this prayer. Let every word spoken here take root in their hearts and bear fruit that will last for generations. Amen. Now, beloved, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us what shifted in your spirit during this message. Share your testimony. Ask your questions. Let this community surround you with prayer and encouragement. You don't have to face tomorrow alone. And if this word touched your soul, if you felt God speaking directly to you through these words, please share this video with someone who needs to hear it. There's someone in your life right now, a friend, a family member, someone you haven't spoken to in years, who is waiting for the very message you just received. Be the vessel that carries this light to them. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Thank you for opening your heart, for allowing these words to penetrate the deepest places of your soul. Your time is precious, and you chose to invest it here. That tells me everything I need to know about your hunger for truth. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. We're building something sacred here, a community of chosen ones who refuse to give up, who understand the weight of their calling, and who are ready to walk in the authority God has given them. Until we meet again, remember this: the test is over. The inheritance is activated. The prayers of your ancestors just found you. Now walk like someone who knows they're carrying heaven's favor. Walk like someone who passed the test. Walk like the chosen one you've always been. God bless you mightily, beloved. Your greatest chapter isn't behind you, it's just beginning.